So, John Lynch, welcome to the Convene podcast. I've been excited about this actually all the way home from, strangely enough, Phoenix, where you live last night. You're a pastor, 27 years. That's longer than the average pastor, which I think is about 3 years in Phoenix. You're the author of the book, I'm so old that I still call it True Face, but I know it's now Cure.
Going old school, my friend.
Cure. And on my worst day, which is in my copy more underlined than not, you're a playwright and actor. You have 3 children, and I'm excited to welcome you to the Convene podcast.
Great. Thank you, man. I've been as excited, if not more than you, just to get to hang out with you. You are a good friend of mine. And
Well, we've shared a few breakfasts on the beach in California, your old stomping ground, and I failed to mention you're a Talbot Seminary grad, and now your elevation just went very high in the minds of all the theologians listening to us. But listen, years ago, I don't know how many years ago now, 6, 7, 8 years ago, you brought down the house with a standing ovation at a Convene event. I was there. You did your classic signature 2 roads talk.
Yeah. What? It was one of those times where something's happening between a speaker and an audience, and everybody knows it. It's like the movie Shakespeare in Love. They're doing Romeo and Juliet, and all of a sudden, everybody realizes, wait, this is something special. Because I've done the talk where it wasn't all that impressive, but that was an incredible evening.
Yes, I think the Holy Spirit was very present, but everybody listening to us wasn't there. So if you had to say the signature themes of 2 roads, and maybe if you sort of cast it for us in the vernacular of leadership, we're at Convene, we're about leaders, we're about young leaders, emerging leaders, entrepreneurial leaders, CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies, CEOs of companies that are starting up in their home, but they're all leaders and they're feeling pressure some days. And 2 roads, I think, speaks to that with hope. And so talk about that.
Well, one of the things to talk about is I'm going to be giving that talk in Ojai at the conference. I am so jacked to do that. And I failed to mention I have the Convene t-shirt.
Oh my. That's extra credit.
Absolutely. So, but in fact, I wrote this down because it's maybe more particular to leaders than anyone else. I wrote, it's not the pressure that harms us, but this debilitating tension that can sneak into the pressure. Tension involves fear that you're going to be revealed as a failure. And your God says, you don't have to carry that tension because I live in you and I can handle you. I'm crazy about you on your worst day. I can handle you. So that tension gets no place to operate. It's the beautiful, and then any remaining pressure just allows me to focus better. But that kind of sets up a little bit of the 2 roads talk in terms of business leaders. There's at some point after grappling with trying to make sense of this faith and trying to perform for God, hoping that he'll like me enough that he'll reward me in some way or not cause harm to me. After a long enough time, God finally says, that's enough. And I want you to face how you're living this life. And I'm going to give you 2 choices. And he sets up pleasing God or trusting God. Is that how you're going to live this life? And most of us would probably say, well, trusting God, I don't know what that means. I don't even know how to handle that. But pleasing God gives me something to do. And especially for an entrepreneur, it's the least I can do. I mean, after all he's done for me. So I play that out and I walk that path, and it takes me to a place of trying so hard to be all that I should be. And it sounds right. And I come up to a door that says two words on it: self-effort. And we know God did his part. We got to do our part. I mean, God helps those who help themselves, right? So I open that door, and it leads me into a particular room where a banner in the back says, "Striving hard to be all God wants me to be." But as I look around the room after a while, everybody's talking smack. Everybody's on their game. But you can see it's not authentic. And you can see it's not real. And you can see nobody trusts each other. And if you look close between the seam on the mask and the face, you can tell there's great sadness and loneliness and isolation, and the sense that there's nobody here that I can trust. So even though I think this is the place I'm supposed to be, one night I kind of slip out the back and I'm back on the road again. And I'm devastated because I don't know what to do now. I don't know how to live my life if I'm not going to be with that set of people. But I find myself back out on the road, and I look at that sign that says, "Trusting God." I'm thinking, what in the world? I am so messed up now because I have no idea what that even means. And I start walking that path, and I see this banner, this statement that says, "Living out of who God says I am." What? It sounds like one word at a time. Thank you so much. Living out of who God says I am. And I keep walking, and there's a door there too. But instead of two words, there's just one word. It's the word humility. And if I could have a definition for humility for us to use, it would be trusting God and others with us. And it's like I have this aha moment where I say, "God, I can't do this anymore. I can't pull this off. Either you are in me and have the power to make things happen. You're stronger, you're better, you're kinder, you have more power. I'm doing this. I'm just grinding it out, and it's killing me. Please, God, be big enough to take care of me." And I open the door into that room. And there is, it looks like the same kind of place at first glance. And so I finally, I've had it. I had my mask on, I'd rip it off, and I say, "You know what? I got to tell you what. Hey, everybody, hey, listen up. I'm doing not fine. I've been doing fine for a long time. I'm a mess. I got so many I got things you don't know about with temptations. You wouldn't even want me in your little room if you knew. So thank you very much. I think I'll leave now." And I hear this voice in the back of this room that yells out, "Hey, wait, that's all you got?" "Yeah, I'll take your little list and I'll call you and raise you 5. I got so much stuff." Anyway, he says to me, "And you're welcome here." And it is a place that is messy, uneven, but it is authentic and real. And I notice here after a while that beautiful work is getting done. Creative work. Oh my, I never thought in a room of grace, and that's what this is. I never thought in a room of grace that there would be any chance that it would be anything but unicorns and bunnies and really bad fourth quarter reports. And to find out, oh my gosh, when people are trusted, they live out of that, and they feel known, they feel safe, they feel empowered, and they start to trust the people around them. And when they get affirmed, they want to do more of what they've been affirmed with. in the place that affirmed them. And so I find this place that is the same in my home as it is in the office, that I can live out this life of taking that tension away and living in the reality that God says, John, I'm crazy about you on your worst day. And so that's a little bit of a review of what we'll get up in Ojai, but it's those choices, because in Hebrews 11:6 it says, without trust, without faith, it is impossible to please me. You can try all day long to please me, but you'll never learn to trust and you'll never please me enough. But if I say, God, I'm going to trust you with who you say I am. You say on my worst day, I'm Christ in me. Christ in me, filled with grace. You say that on my worst day. All right, I'm going to believe it. And he says, John, not only are you trusting me, but you'd never pleased me so much in your whole life. Oh my gosh. Now I know that, and I don't feel behind at home. I don't feel like I can't parent because I'm out of step with my family. I feel the same way at the office. I don't feel like I have to just lead with my authority and with my role and my title and I don't have to lead just in that. I can lead out of my person and the strength of my person and the safety and the ability to bless others and be winnable and to be able to say, hey, how am I affecting you? And suddenly you have this arena around you that is safe and authentic and genuine and highly creative and highly productive. And it shocks you. You go, how can this happen? And that's life in the business room of grace.
Wow. Thank you for that. It reminds me of a meeting I was in one time. Sometimes I like to go first when we're supposed to introduce ourselves. And if I'm the host at Convene, where we have people who are interested in Convene, of course, they're all trying to impress us with their resume.
Yeah.
And if I don't go first, it usually looks something like this. You know, Jimmy introduces himself and says, I started this company at $1 million and it went to $1 billion, and I have 5 wonderful kids and a dog and a Dodge Caravan minivan, and my lawn is perfect, and my children line up when I get home, and one has a newspaper and one has the cigars and one has my slippers, and I'm like,
and my hunting horn too. Yeah.
Are you kidding me right now? So sometimes I like to go first and talk about my real life, where my marriage was hanging by a thread in 1983. And then everybody does the Me Too thing, where they say, I have a troubled child, or I'm so stressed right now because this is the week that my wife is having her cancer treatment and I'm here. But why do you think executives feel like they have to sort of perform and pose and wear the mask instead of being real? What say if you had coffee with one of those people, what would you say to them?
Yeah, and they're not alone. You ought to go to a pastor's conference. You want to see the mask on tight and how my church has grown. And I make the statement: the more influence we have, the more we're tempted to hide our true selves, fearing that we'll lose that influence. We are afraid that if I ever took off that mask, that I would lose my authority. I would lose my strength. I would lose my place. That's what we've been taught. And so there are no together people, are there? That took me a long time to learn. I thought there was this Gnostic set of really, really on their game people, and they look like it, but there is none of us. All of us have our stuff. Just some of us have better teeth and sharper looking clothes, but all of us.
Better shoes.
Sharper looking shoes for sure. Yeah, that to me, that is the definer. Yeah. But I love this statement. I think we wrote it back in Beau's Cafe, maybe. All of us are awakening to the reality that I can't control my life the way I thought I could. And I'm stuck with unresolved issues whose symptoms I'm trying to fix, and all without the help of anyone else. I don't even know what the issues are. I'm just trying to fix symptoms so I don't embarrass myself. And I'm doing it all by myself in private. And this is why I love Convene. This next statement that I'm going to make, I don't know of any group anywhere who does this better for business people than Convene. Listen to this. After that last statement, what if there was a place somewhere, not with 200 people, nobody at the DMV cares what you're doing. What if there was a place so safe that the worst of me could be known, and I would discover that I would be cared for, valued, and loved more in the telling of it, not less? What if there was such a place? And Convene is daring to risk, and they're all over the country, everywhere. They're not in Trenton, New Jersey, I don't think, but other than that, you can go anywhere. And they're doing that. They're taking that risk, and they're finding one of the great, terrible things of isolation is that it causes us to make decisions out of circumstance instead of our convictions. And so to have this safe place where the worst of me could be known. Here's a mind-blowing statement for me is this: all of us were created by God with limitations. And you think, why would you do that? If you love me, why would you create me with limitations? And the answer is so that I would be loved. If love is the process of meeting needs, then unless I have some people in my world, I don't get loved. I can get admired, respected, but I don't get known and loved. And so the beautiful thing in a Convene group is that suddenly now there's these people who know my story, and I discover I'm respected more, I'm enjoyed more, I'm valued more, I'm listened to more, and I'm stood with more. And it blows our minds, just blows our minds. Mm-hmm. So that's my plug for this group, because it is stunning to watch it happen and to watch the stories of goodness that follow those groups.
Thank you. I was in a city yesterday that will remain nameless, and that happened. It happened with a gentleman who we spent an hour and a half working on his scenario that was difficult. And there were questions that were asked that were very, I would say, tense and truthful.
Yeah.
And, kind of unearthing little by little.
And you don't know where this is going to go. It could go south so many ways. Yeah.
And it's quite different, quite, in my view, better than, we're going to talk about the 17 leadership principles that will make you a great leader, or the 5 things if you do by tomorrow, you'll have a better team, or the 3 things if you do by Saturday, everything will be perfect. Right. And, sometimes it's I hired this person and they're not working out and I feel terrible and I have a board meeting tomorrow. Or I thought that the program that I was about to do would turn our company around and it didn't. And so, yeah, it's powerful to be in a group of people who care about each other and live together. I like to say real learning happens over time in community. And there's this guy that we know from a couple thousand years ago, Jesus, who also believed that because he hung out with 12 people for a long time, 3 years. And he said, we're going to eat together. We're going to fix our sandals together. We're going to wash each other's feet. We're going to do life together.
Yeah.
And, but he's our model. And so,
I think of something happened to me one Sunday as a preacher that changed how I see. In the middle of a message, I said, how long, coming to this particular community, this church, how long did it take before you knew that you were safe? And maybe it's not a fair question. Maybe you don't feel safe yet. Maybe you just got here, but just give me a number. And I never do this, but I said, did it take 2 years? And raise your hand. I just said, raise your hand. Nobody raised their hand. A year and a half. Nobody raised their hand. 6 months. Nobody raised their hand. 2 weeks. Nobody raised their hand. I got down to 5 or less minutes, and everybody that I could see in the room raised their hand.
Wow.
Isn't that there's something palpable and tangible about when we with someone else commit to each other. It creates something in our office to have a team that risks to stay and work through hard things. You can sense it, feel it, smell it, just like the community with the 12 with Jesus. As it spread out, they went, what are you guys? This is legit. This is real. And then with Peter and at Pentecost, everybody just says, you guys, what is happening here? And it's that beautiful wonder that Jesus modeled for us.
Mm-hmm. Your book has been republished on your worst day. And that's an incredible book. What would be on your worst day that would speak to a leader who might be trying to minimize and hide their worst day? You wrote a whole book about it. I was talking to a leader the other day who had a very tough situation with one of the things that was happening in their life. I'll make this very oblique. And I called them and I said, how's it going? I know that this really bad thing happened. And they said, I haven't had time to think about it. I haven't had time to feel anything about it. And I'm just kind of compartmentalizing it, sticking it away. And I'm kind of hoping it will go away because that's, I have no time to deal with it. But you wrote a whole book about it.
Yeah.
And some of the worst day things.
Yeah, I wanted to write this book, first of all, to show that it's normative to have worse days. It's not, I'm not this emotional exception. All of us, just some of us, like you say, we stuff it and we hide it away and it comes, we cry at commercials and we just tough it away and it doesn't work for us. It eventually breaks. It eventually in some way implodes. It's like playing a game of whack-a-mole. You can put one down, sublimate one down, but another comes up. And so I wanted to show if we can be vulnerable, authentic, beautiful things can happen. If I hide it away, I get sick. I am sick to the degree of my hiddenness. Isn't that crazy? So how do I create those places, those pockets? And I have men especially. I love having them give their favorite stories of on my worst day and then explain why. And it just it kind of peels away layers, and they're able to get down to places that they maybe have never talked to anyone about before. So that's why I wrote it. And I said, especially for a business person, it's important maybe to hear this, that you're going to have worse days simply because you're on this planet, not because there is necessarily anything wrong with who you are. And that's a huge get for me. Another is God makes no mistakes regarding you, ever. He never says, oops. He loves you more than you love you. And what this incredible thing about redemption, 2 Corinthians 4:16 says, every day, every moment, every hour, from the second that thing got broken or hurt or devastated or misplaced or lost, or a relationship went away, or someone had to be let go and it was not good and it was ugly, from the moment that happens, God on your behalf goes to work to redeem. And there's never a moment that he sleeps on it. And there's never a moment, whether you feel you're worthy of it or deserve it or want it, he doesn't stop. And so this book, what it does is I have at different points along the way, I show God showed up. God tied this thread together. God healed this. And so it is powerful to know that that's happening with me in all my stories, in all my things, so that I don't lose heart. Also, I wanted to show that you're right on time. That's an important statement for me to make. Yeah. And then I said that he cares about me more than I care about me, and he thinks about me more every day than there are sands in the seas. And maybe this is the biggest get for me, is I tried to write the voice of Jesus, of how I imagine, now that I know who he is, and now I know that he loves me so dearly, I tried to imagine what he would say to me in different situations along the way. And I realized in those ugly, hard, frightening places where I didn't know where he was, he says, I was standing right there with you, experiencing it with you. Nothing did I not go through that you had to go through. And I was sometimes standing in the arena when you couldn't. So I wanted all those things to come out, especially for us men and women too. Women really tell me that they relate greatly to the book, but I think they do this stereotype, but I think they do this more naturally than we are culturally conditioned to do. So that's why I wrote it. I wanted people to be able to enter in with their own stories and go, wait, here's this guy who's telling his worst days. Maybe I can have the safety to think about what God's doing in my worst day.
There was a day for me about 30 years ago, lost a big chunk of money, more than I could afford to lose at the time. And I was at the time spending time with Leighton Ford, Billy Graham's brother-in-law, and his sort of activity that he liked to take people through at the time was to put the Rembrandt picture of the prodigal in the front of the room in large format. And we would have to stare at the picture.
I didn't know that. That is crazy.
For 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And 30 minutes is a long time to stare at a picture. But of course, one of the authors that wrote about his experience stared at the picture for a couple of days in the art museum that it's in Russia. But anyway, here's the father with his hands on the prodigal's shoulders. And the prodigal is bowed down with his bald, shaved head that is not a good thing in the culture of the day. His shoes, that one of them is worn through, his garments are tattered, and the father's hands are on the son because the son has returned, right? But here's the thing. I had to answer the question, what do you think the father would say to you if you were the prodigal, the guy who lost 40 grand in the stock trade?
Yep.
That was me. And here's what God would say to me in my mindset of 30 years ago. I told you not to put all your money in one stock. Didn't you listen? Didn't you hear me? Your dad told you not to do that. Why did you do that? See, I told you this is not good. How are your kids going to go to college now? What are you going to do about fixing this? How are you going to get this back? Wow, you are sure disappointing me. Now, all of what I just said is, of course, wrong. If you could replace my story with any business executive story of a mistake, a failure, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so good what you're doing, because I, as a Jesus follower, I have the permission. When I hear something that says you're not enough, you failed, you're messed up, you'll never catch up, you violated this, I can know for certain that's never the voice of Jesus. I love that in Matthew 11, it's the only time when he describes what he's like. He says, I am gentle and humble and kind. So his voice to me, I will always know it because it's gentle and humble and kind. And he would say, oh, Greg, you didn't do anything morally wrong, kid. You just were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And by the way, I'm back here pulling all the strings, and you don't know what it's going to look like yet, but you're going to have such an incredible life. Oh my gosh, if I could just show you a few years ahead, this life that I have planned for you and your kids and vacations and the beauty of what you get to do with other executives, that you wouldn't be able to handle it. And I love you so much. That's what he would say. He would say, and I think one of the things that painting does, that Nouwen does that magnificent book in, for so long, I think we've been trying to love Jesus and love him well. And Jesus says, thank you. I really appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. But would you let me love you? Would you? I really appreciate you loving me, but at some point it's going to have diminishing returns unless you let me love you. And that would just mean allowing me to do what that father did to the son. And the son had to let him. And that's magical when we figure that out, because all of us then, in our roles, we're not striving, we're not performing, we're not thinking that we're on a short leash and it's all going to get pulled out on us. We're not thinking all those lies. Instead, I get to know that I am accepted, delighted in, valued, wanted, created before the world began, exactly the way I am, for the exact group of people that God's going to put me around to get to influence. Isn't that crazy? He chose, he says, I wanted there to be a John Lynch on this planet at this time for some people that he can reach that nobody else will. And that's true with every single one of us. He's that crazy about us. And so I can walk into any situation as an executive and say, I'm enough. He says, I'm enough. I'm not set up for failure. He's not going, I tell you what, I'm going to have to expose you here. I'm on to you. He never does that. He never plays that game. He's never going to hit us with a 2x4. He's never that. He says, I'm kind, I'm gentle, I am humble in heart. And you're going to find rest for your souls.
John Lynch, I think you are one of the most powerful voices on earth today about grace. You hit it out of the park every time about grace, and the world needs to hear it.
Yep.
And so I just want to applaud the work that you're doing and say thank you. And I look forward to seeing you, hopefully before May in Oakland, California.
I love that you're getting out to Phoenix these days.
I'm going to come see you even before that, and we'll have to wear a different color shirt instead of black for the next meeting. But thanks for joining us on the Convene podcast. We're very grateful. And check out John's book, On My Worst Day, or his previous book, The Cure, and Beau's Cafe. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, what a privilege. Thank you, Greg.